on a scale from 1 to 10, with 1 being the little to no happiness, and 10 being the happiest you've ever been, very happy. How would you rate your level of happiness? I'm gonna give you a few minutes to think about that. Now, hopefully you've got a number in your head. And so, one of the interesting thing about the way that our brains work for that is that our brains start at 10, and then we start deducting and subtracting things for the things that came into our mind that we feel take away from or subtract from our happiness. So we subtract from that number 10. So if I were in the room with you and I asked you to raise your hand if you rated yourself 7 or below, you don't feel like you need to do that. But if I were in the room, I might ask you to do that. If you rated your level of happiness 7 or below. And I've done this before. I've done a similar presentation in other settings, even pre-COVID. And almost all of the room, or a large part of the room, maybe 80% of the room, raised their hand for 7 or below. That's a pretty significant number in relation on that scale. So, the Harris Happiness Poll, this organization that runs this poll does it yearly, generally yearly. What I could find was stats from 2018 and 2020. So when the participants that they interviewed, of those participants, 31% of those participants reported feeling generally happy, meaning that 69 participants reported feeling not happy. Move that to 2020, and we're looking at only 14% of people are reporting feeling generally happy, meaning 86% of the participants they interviewed reported feeling unhappy or increased levels of unhappiness. I think that's really important and significant. So, I do think happiness and management of stress and just being able to access increased happiness is not been an issue specific to COVID. It's something that has predated, obviously. If 69% of the population is generally reporting feeling unhappy. So this is an issue that really isn't new to us. What is new is the level of our social isolation and the impact that that's causing on our health, mental health functioning and emotional health. But this is not an issue that's new. It's kind of magnified the issue a little bit that's already there. So I think it's important to keep in mind. So going back to your rating, the rating that you provided yourself on a rating from 1 to 10, if you were one of those individuals that fell at 7 or below, let's think about that for a minute. If you have children and your child came home and scored a 70 on a test, you probably wouldn't feel, you'd be a little concerned, or maybe a 70 is 100 for them. But generally a 70, that's just really close to failing, a failing grade. So we would be concerned by that 70. And I think we should be just as concerned if that's your rating, because a 70 is not optimal. We want that number to be a little bit higher. So let's get into some strategies to maybe help increase that number in your rating scale. Okay, so like I said, COVID has really impacted our ability to even access the normal things that we're able to cope with everyday life. It's impacted our ability to connect with friends and family, at least in the physical sense. I know, virtual access to friends and family is definitely there. Although the elderly population sometimes struggles with being able to utilize technological means to communicate with others. So that's a population I'm personally pretty concerned about. But even despite that, just in general, we're not able to have that physical contact, and physical contact is really important to overall health. So that is something that an issue we are definitely facing. And just in the mental health field, we're getting a lot of referrals, an increased number of referrals for people attempting to access care. Many of requesting virtual counseling, but still we're seeing that there is this increased need in tending to the mental and emotional health of our community. So to get us started, I wanted to review a little bit about the science of happiness. So happiness is, it not only feels good, actually someone researched this and they found out that it's actually good for you too. So people that report higher levels of happiness, they tend to have less immune struggles and are generally more healthy. So happier people have stronger immune systems. They're less likely to catch colds, less likely to suffer from heart disease, and engage in unhealthy behaviors like smoking or drinking to excess. Happiness also appears to make people more sociable and exploratory. Again, this is an aspect of happiness that we're going to need to look at a little bit differently while we're dealing with social distancing, but it does increase levels of happiness. Happier people tend to be more sociable and have more motivation for socialization. Happier people also tend to volunteer more and are more likely to help others at work. And speaking of work, happier people tend to actually they've done some research on this, they tend to get better customer evaluations. Now, I recognize you're in the school, you're serving students and parents. But even in that setting, I'm sure happier people tend to get better marks or better remarks from their colleagues and the parents and children that they work with than their like maybe less rosy counterparts. And there also, research has shown that happy people are less likely to quit their job. So for administration, it's really important that administrators are working to help increase the levels of happiness in their staff as well. So if happiness is the goal, that's kind of what we're wanting to get to, how do we get there? So it's probably not a surprise to learn that there is no simple, fast, quick, reliable formula, if you will, for achieving absolute happiness. Now, certainly you're going to read some self-help books. I'm sure there's popular gurus out there, especially on TikTok and all the other social media platforms that they have. They're going to try and convince you that if you make this one change, it's guaranteed happiness. And the reality is that's simply not true. Achieving happiness is about putting in ongoing effort, much in the same way that, staying in shape requires regular exercise, or getting good at a sport requires regular practice. It's also important to note that happiness is a process. It is not a place. So, the fundamental process of happiness, it's a feeling state that is variable day to day. Even the happiest people, so people that rate themselves at a 10, occasionally dip into frustration and sadness and worry. And those people that are generally happy tend to respect and acknowledge their feelings when they are dipping down into the more negative kind of emotions that don't feel as good to our bodies. So this is a quote from Confucius. It's one that I really like, because I really try and remember in my own health. It's every man has two lives. The second starts when he realizes he only has one. And the reason why I think it's really important this quote really relates to what we're talking about today, is that we really need to be working on our mind, body, and spirit to make sure that we are, fueling ourselves with everything that we can, all the positive things that we can, that we are setting ourselves up to be as successful as possible, even while we're dealing with these really terrible times related to COVID and this global pandemic. There are still things that we can be doing to fuel ourselves with the good and positive things, so that we can be better able to deal with the world that we're dealing with right now. So I'm going to cover some things that will help us to be able to do that. So research has shown that there's several things that positively impact levels of happiness. So while there isn't a formula, what we have seen is there is a correlation or a relationship between people's reported levels of happiness and these variables. So quality sleep. It's not specific to quantity. So it's very important to bear in mind that sleep is about quality as well. It's just not simply quantity, although quantity is also important. So general recommendations for sleep experts, they recommend adults, so that's individuals over the age of 18, to get around 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. For elderly populations or older adults, that number actually increases a little bit. But for the general population, general public, 7 to 9 hours of sleep are recommended. Now, you'll notice that's a range. And so what that means is some people function optimally at 7 hours, while some function optimally at 8 or 9 hours. And so it's important to find your sweet spot of where you feel the most rested when you wake up in the morning. You want to make sure that where you're sleeping feels comfortable. And there's a lot of sleep associations that are important, and that you likely know how you sleep the best. If sleep is an issue for you and you aren't able to get good quality sleep, spend some time, use this time to figure out why that is. Why is your sleep disrupted? And is there something you can do about it to make it more restful for you and restorative? Quality sleep research has shown it boosts your mood. It also makes you less sensitive to negativity. So I'm going to talk more on that a little bit later in regards to negativity, but that's a huge aspect that is really important in relation to managing your level of happiness right now. The other things, and it's not one of those things we can't get away from time and time again. Research shows that these things matter. So these are ways that you can directly fuel your body the right way. So regular exercise and eating a healthy diet. We want to take care of our bodies. Again, we only have one life, right? We only have one body. So in this lifetime. And so we want to make sure that we're taking care of our body, that we're taking care of our health. This includes, and so I'm going to include in this kind of, part here around fueling your body the right way with managing your mind, stress, meditation, the things you're exposed to. We all know that the highest expression of ourselves and the most evolved person requires regular and the right fuel for our body. It's the good stuff, making sure you're eating a healthy diet, what you're putting into your body, that it's whether it's technology and what you're seeing. I think that's also important and can impact our mindset and the way we fuel our body, but it's also what we're eating vegetables and fruit and all the things that we know are the healthy things that we should be eating. Those things will help increase our levels of happiness and make us just feel better. We want to get a better sense of our machine, your body, so that you can feel better. And then when you feel better and you physically feel better, you're going to enjoy every moment of the day a little bit better. And so these two things, I can't say enough about how important that these are. I recognize during COVID, sometimes it's a little bit more difficult to get that regular exercise in. And with stores, sometimes it's being so variable what's on the shelves with people panic buying. But I do think it's important, use some creativity and try and get these things as much as possible and access the regular exercise and engage in a healthy eating diet and eating patterns. Really important. It's important for your whole family. So if you have a family and children, you can make it a whole family occasion of making sure that everyone's really building themselves up in this way. Additionally, practice gratitude. So the practice of gratitude has been shown to increase levels of happiness in individuals. Writing thank you notes, just trying to be thankful for the blessings that we all have. Stop to notice the beauty around you. Being grateful actually focuses your attention on more positive emotion, so it moves away from that negativity that we can get sucked into. And so this is a really great practice. There's lots of literature out on this. I'm not going to spend too much time on that other than notate it's a really important habit to get into, and it can really increase your levels of happiness. And then lastly is be kind to others. This isn't the last strategy we're going to cover, but just one of the things that researchers has found correlated with higher levels of happiness. But that's people that tend to be kind to others. There's also something, being kind to those around you actually has been shown to boost your own levels of happiness. And then it automatically puts the people around you in a better mood. So it's a win-win for yourself and those that you're being kind to. So another thing that I want to talk about, especially related to what's going on right now, is this reframe of looking at the struggle, not only as it being real, because it is real, the stress that we're experiencing is real, but that also it can be good. Here's the thing, life is uncomfortable sometimes. It's uncomfortable right now because we're dealing with COVID, and it's probably going to be uncomfortable at some point in the future, even after COVID is hopefully no longer a thing one day. So whether you're at the beginning stages of a fitness routine, or you're at the end of a toxic relationship, or navigating the world in a global pandemic, part of being a functioning, healthy human being is being able to be at ease with the unknown. And I recognize it's easier to say than do. And it's something, but it's one of those things that I hope that I think we would be better for if we work towards being at ease with the unknown and the ambiguity of life. Discomfort doesn't have to be negative if we reframe it in a different way. Try as much as you can to look at comfort or discomfort as your friend. Not being happy or content with certain situations in life or certain feelings in life can be a massive, massive motivator. And these kind of that discomfort can be amazing at facilitating change. So if you just reframe it as being actually something that can be good, I think we can move away from that kind of negative patterns of thinking. I think as a society, we've been fed this line that we should seek out comfort. And I don't think that we're actually meant to do that. I think we're meant to seek out lessons and, things that are hard to do. And when we're not doing anything, we don't feel well. So I think personally, and in my spirit, that we should seek out those things that we're uncomfortable, that make us that discomfort, because it increases our motivation, and facilitates change within us. So in related to COVID, I think it can be really helpful to reframe this and see COVID and what we're dealing with right now as an opportunity, to get connected with your family, to get connected with, and whether you're, single or, you have a partner and children, using that opportunity to get connected with the people in your life that you maybe haven't been able to connect as much previously, or get a healthy fitness routine going on, and trying to follow a healthier diet and fueling your body in healthier ways. I think if we look at this as a reframe of looking at this struggle as not all bad, in what we're dealing with right now, but that there are elements of good, and good can come from it, I think will help us to have a little bit more of a positive mindset. Another reframe that I think is really important, and something that we really should supersedes really even COVID. So beyond what we're even dealing with now, but something I found in my own life is trying to prioritize my thoughts. So prioritize your thoughts, surround yourself with positivity as much as you can control. I recognize we're kind of stuck with the people that we're living with right now. And hopefully that you can cultivate a healthy community there, as much as possible. But there is some degree of control that you have on your own levels of positivity. So if you're not positive by nature, work towards a more optimistic mindset. There's different ways and strategies you can use to do that. I'll cover those briefly here in just a little bit. But we really are kind of what we think. So you are what you think. So much of how we perceive life, love, family, career, friendships, it's all in the way we think about them. We need to push ourselves towards positivity. And sometimes this might require you reducing or eliminating people within your life that are more negative. We're not really as independent as we all like to think we are. Our thought processes are not independent. We care about what people think, and sometimes it bothers us. We care if people are critical or encouraging and motivating. People are just a huge aspect of the fuel in your life. So you get energy, or you can get energy from people, and you get inspiration from people, and they can be motivating to you, but they can also be like mud. So seek out what qualities or characteristics that you find inspiring, and seek those people out, so that they can fuel you, or figure out what makes you unhappy, and try to eliminate that from your life as much as possible. Eliminating or reducing interactions with people that are negative, will really, really help to try and build that optimistic mindset, especially if you tend to be in the more negative realm. People are our fuel. You get energy from those things, from people. And so wanting to make sure that you are surrounding yourself with the people that do energize you is really important. Here's a thought changer. So this is a graphic I came across while working on this presentation, and I really liked it. So you should be provided handouts, or if not, let me know and I can send you a handout if for some reason they're not sent out. Because I do really like this. I actually have this printed out on my desk area so that I can remember to try to think more positively. But it just gives you some great, pretty quick reframes for when you're feeling a certain way, what you can try. So for instance, the top one is, this is too much. So you can try, okay, what do I need? It helps to reframe and really kind of be more of a problem solver than just kind of stuck in those feelings. Sometimes when we experience those negative feelings, not that we don't need to honor them or recognize that they're happening, but it can feel like we're stuck in that mud and we're not able to get out. And so this is a great reframe for trying to figure out what you would need or do to get out of that feeling of stuckness. So as a part of, working towards positivity, is the importance of managing the community you're in and making sure that you're a positive member of that community. So we have a responsibility there. Yes, we want to try to avoid negative and, move towards positive, but we ourselves also need to be putting work in. We can't just make the positive push be the responsibility of the people around us. It is also our responsibility to make sure that we are managing ourselves and taking care of ourselves. Making sure you're a good member of the community, that you're doing your part, is really important. There's a lot of cynicism in the world right now about inspiration and motivation. And honestly, I really think a big reason behind that is because there's a lot of fake stuff out there. We're inundated by social media and such with just this hypocrisy, people saying you should do this and then living a different way. And so I think what's the important thing is looking at your community for the light, figure out where the light is in your community and gravitate towards that. When you're surrounded by more positive people, inspiration, people inspire you. You're motivated to do good as well and to feel good. Now, it's also important, as I mentioned, that to remember that, you're never always, no one's ever going to be at a 9 or a 10 always. That's not real. But we do have that sense of responsibility to our community and ourselves and our family and friends to make sure that we're doing what we need to do in order to be a positive influence on those around us. And if we're finding ourselves in a rut, get help. Reach out, figure out what's going wrong, talk with your family, friends, a professional. Take care of your mind, your body, your spirit, put in the energy and the effort that you need to make sure that you're your best machine. Because again, it has to, we only have one life. And so we need to make sure that we're running that marathon with all that we have. So if you find yourself not able to take part of be that positive member of the community that you're wanting to be, figure out what's wrong and do something about it. Okay. So this is another reframe that I like to look at just in my own sense. I like control and I like to be in control. I'm sure many of us share that same struggle, but I recognize over time, maybe it's just that I tell myself because I still feel like I can be in control of things. God has different messages for me on that. But there are a lot of things, most things we really can't control beyond ourselves, even if we think we can. Even the children that we work with, we can't control them. They have their own behaviors, they have their own actions, they have their own feelings. And those are not things that we can control, but there are things that we can. So sometimes when I'm feeling that sense of anxiety or nervousness or stress, I'll do this strategy where I look at what I can control versus what I can't. Because if I can focus on the things I can control, I can get a sense of calmness from that. So this is just a brief sample of things you can control and things you can't control, things that I think about really specific to COVID and what we're dealing with right now. And so I wanted to show this to you all so you can see how that might help you. Hopefully it might be a strategy, especially if you have a high need for control when you're feeling like that control is feeling threatened in some way, or you're feeling out of control, going back to what you can control versus what you can't control. This kind of a strategy, so moving to that cognitive thinking, can also move you away from your emotions, because sometimes emotions can be really, can take over your body, can kind of hijack your body, and your problem solving isn't as great when your emotions have hijacked your body. And so this is one way to be able to move from your emotional self to your cognitive self, or your thinking brain, that kind of pulls you away from those emotions so you can better problem solve. You don't want to, not that I'm encouraging avoiding behavior or emotions, because that's never a good thing either. If you avoid them, they end up coming out all at once, and you're really not able to control them. So it is important that we're externalizing those emotions and working through them in different ways. But sometimes there's a time and place for that. So you're in a classroom and you're feeling really stressed because your students are, yelling and screaming and not doing anything that you're asking them to do. Maybe that's a time that you can utilize one of these strategies, or this strategy here, where you can think about what you can control versus what you can't. And the more and more I've come personally to accept and understand the things that I can control and things I can't, the less my anxiety is around when I'm feeling out of control. So this is a strategy that I've personally used, and I hope it can be helpful to you. So I want to briefly address as well some problems specific to COVID. So one big problem that we've seen quite a bit is we've had clients report to us, we're just having too much family time. There's a reason why we're meant to go out in the world from our family and then come back later, at nighttime or at the end of the day. Too much of people can sometimes cause a lot of problems. So if you're finding yourself surrounded by your family too much or feeling like it's too much, here's some things that you might consider to kind of help you manage that stress, is to consider adjusting your rule structure. So just like pre-COVID, when you take your kids on a plane and you let them watch probably TV or some sort of engage in some sort of technology that you might not let them do on a routine basis or as much as you're going to let them do that on the plane. Well, it's kind of like what we are, it's kind of the same right now. It's like, imagine us on a plane and because we are isolated, we're restricted in certain ways. So you may end up adjusting your rule structure to accommodate what's happening in the world right now. I think it's important that you communicate that to your children if you're adjusting that rule structure, and also let them know that at some point it will likely change. So when the world does get back into a greater sense of normalcy, I'm not sure we're ever going to go back to like it was before, but hopefully at some point our ability to engage with others will increase. And so when that happens and engage with the world, when that happens, the rule structure might shift back. So I would make sure that your children recognize and understand that, and also understand that this is a little bit different. You might even utilize the plane analogy with them to let them know, it's kind of like we're on a plane. We're going to change our rules here a little bit so that we can manage our home life a little bit better. You also want to make sure and accept that your patience will wear sometimes. Anytime we're surrounded by people that much, our patience is a little more variable, and it dips down a little bit more when we're not, especially when we're not able to get that reprieve of getting out. And reprieve sounds bad from getting from your family, but getting away and not being surrounded by the same people increases our levels of patience, actually. So the fact that we're surrounded by the same people constantly, our levels of patience might dip down quite a bit. Just accept. I think it's really important to accept that your patience will wear sometimes. You're probably going to freak out. You might freak out on your kids a little bit. Sometimes it's not the best thing in the world, and I don't want to encourage that. But it's also not the end of the world. Don't beat yourself up about it when it happens. Just try to do better the next time. And I think the biggest thing is owning when it happens. So if something happens and you lose your patience with your children, talking with them about that. You can actually model with them what losing patience feels like, and then how you work through it, and also how you relationally repair if you've had some sort of disruption in your relationship. Dr. Landreth, who's a play therapist, who's like the guru of child-centered play therapy, has a rule that he talks about. It's not about what you did, but it's about what happened after what you did. And I think that's a really good thing to remember here. So losing your patience, not probably not your proudest moment, but teaching your children when they might lose their patience, and then what to do with it beyond that can be really empowering. So reframe and see it more as a positive when it does happen. But it's really important that you own it when it happens and you don't make it about your children. And I didn't put this up here, but another thing to consider is, the internet. A lot of people have done a lot of work. The internet abounds with kid-friendly, activities and podcasts and things that kids can do when they're feeling bored. There's educational videos and museum tours that kids can take virtually now. So you might access that when possible, and then get outside. Take advantage. The weather's really beautiful right now, so take advantage of being able to get out and soak in some of that vitamin D, which can also increase levels of happiness. So I'm going to move topics a little bit to a side of too much family time is spending a lot more time with your partner or spouse. So obviously we know that this is definitely going to be a problem. I think the biggest thing is to make sure that that you have a game plan, because that's imperative. We know, and we can anticipate. Even before COVID, spending too much time with your partner or spouse is going to cause problems. I think the important thing is chat about, and if you haven't done this already, do this. Chat about what to do when things are stressful, because they're going to be stressful. Normalize that it's okay if you get, on each other's nerves and decide on a signal maybe. So we teach this to kids, but it might be helpful to do that when you're engaging with your partner or spouse and emotions are high. To go ahead preemptively to target or identify a symbol or a signal of some sort that communicates, okay, we need to take a moment in separate rooms, or recognize that better communication is indicated for right now or needed, or perhaps even someone needs a hug or to talk maybe about emotions that are coming up. So some sort of signal that you can communicate, hey, we need to pause. Because if you have that signal, again, it takes you from your emotional self, so that sense of stress, to the cognitive place, because you're moving back to the memory or recall of what that symbol is. And then it will also trigger in your partner the same kind of a process. And it's important to take a pause and a break, because nothing good ever comes from that high levels of emotions. It's like two people going, just trying to tug on the same rope. Nothing ever good comes from that. Maybe someone might win at the end, but the battle is hard and too much to handle sometimes. And so taking a break and pausing ahead of time can be really helpful. And trying to find places where you can get some degree of separation, even if you're in the same house and you don't get to leave very often, will be helpful as well. And then get comfortable asking for and giving. This is important, and not just asking for, but you also have to give it. Give each other space. We all have different conflict resolution styles and the way that we like to manage things. So you might find that you really like to solve problems immediately, but maybe your spouse needs time to process, sit and think about it, and come back and solve the problem. So recognizing your conflict style and what you need can be really helpful, because then you can actually help your partner handle their emotional, whatever they're finding stressful at the time as well. So making sure that this is a skill that you have honed in on, and if you haven't, work on it. You can work on it with your spouse or partner and talk with them about it, about how you can give each other space and how they can ask for space as well. So moving on to a additional problem that we're seeing quite a bit specific to COVID is some people are reporting too much alone time. So these are individuals that might not have immediate family close by, or they might live alone or with roommates. We're finding a lot of single adults are having a really hard time with this isolation piece, as you might imagine. The fact is that loneliness can have a major impact on mental health. It just adds to depression and anxiety and stress, and can interfere with anyone's ability to get a good night's sleep, even, which is, we already talked about, being really imperative to healthy functioning. It impacts physical health. It's been shown to levels of loneliness and increased levels of loneliness have been shown to almost be just as bad as smoking on the heart and body. So this is a big problem for individuals who feel like they're experiencing too much alone time and feeling lonely. Reaching out to others and to friends and family, it's a good way to feel less alone. I think that virtually, you can always do that virtually, but again, there is that physical sense that is really important. So if you can identify friends or family that do live close by, even if you don't have immediate family members, target people that do feel safer to you to connect with, that maybe are also isolating and are not engaging socially, in the world, or trying to be a little more restrictive in who they're engaging with, especially if you're concerned about your own health. Those might be safe people that you could engage with and spend time with, and get that need of social interaction on a smaller scale. Consider reaching out to offer support to others. So helping people during times of crisis really helps, I think really helps you to control your own anxiety, because you're like, oh, I have a purpose. It makes us feel less alone. And even if you don't know, the person that you're reaching out to well enough to maybe ask them how they're doing, you can still maybe send them a message, and a text message or a Facebook message or some other kind of message, just saying, hey, I'm checking on friends right now. Is there anything you need? It's a really short way to be able to check in, and it can make you increase your levels of connection, even if you don't get a response back. It's important not to scroll, but do connect online with real activities. So there are some real-time activities. There's some groups that have been put together specifically for individuals who are single and are feeling lonely and alone during this time. So access those. That can be a really helpful helpful way of being able to help manage those feeling of loneliness is be able to connect with other people who feel the same way that you do. Another is to busy yourself with craft and at-home projects. So if busying yourself and getting things done can be helpful. And then volunteering virtually. So there are several different platforms that are allowing you, individuals to volunteer in a virtual setting, tutor children, things like that. That you might find connecting with elderly and seeing the elderly or older adults in assisted living facilities, different things that you can access to be able to contribute to the community, if that's a passion of you, and if you feel like that would kind of increase your levels of connection. So moving a little bit ahead, so these are just some daily, I'm going to move to just some basic strategies before we wrap up. But these are some daily social distancing questions to ask yourself. So when, quarantine first happened in March, these were actually things I printed out to make sure I was keeping aware of. And I gave it to most of my clients because I think it's also helpful in the kids that I work with for them to keep in mind. But I think it might be helpful for you all too. So if you want to, feel free to print this out and post it somewhere so that you can keep a reminder. But reviewing what you're grateful for today, who am I checking in or connecting with today? What expectations of normal am I letting go of today? I think that's something that we have to work on. That's that control. How am I getting outside today? How am I moving my body today? And what beauty am I creating, cultivating, or inviting today? So this is a really brief, wrap-up questions that really kind of hit on most of what I talked about during this presentation today. Moving ahead, this is just some sensory ways of being able to make yourself feel better. Again, I give this to some of the kids. That's why it looks a little kid-like, graphic-y, but it's helpful for you too. So these are the same strategies that if I were working with you as an adult, I would recommend. Really helpful to be able to just kind of meet our needs to make us feel better more immediately in the things that we do have control over. Some wrap up for teaching under a global pandemic. So things to keep in mind. I did do a presentation on this. It should be on our JFS website, but these are some big things that I wanted to pull from that presentation because I know teaching under the global pandemic is like, I feel like we're in a different realm and level of reality. I can't even imagine what you all are going through. I teach college courses sometimes and I feel like I'm pulling my hair out with having to do this stuff remotely and just the different things that we're having now that it's not remotely, just the way that we're having to manage things in the classroom. It's really hard. And so I think some good reminders are to make sure that you're open with your students about the struggles. They're dealing with this too. It's hard. Everyone's having a hard time with it. And honoring and recognizing those struggles, I think ignoring them only make them grow and they add to the chaos in your class. So trying to address them immediately as possible. And you don't have to wait for the school counselor to come along to deal with them. And if you need some support in how to deal with those in your classroom, definitely reach out to the school counselor. But these are things that you can integrate in your daily routine. Try to demonstrate optimism and hopefulness as much as possible. Again, being a positive member of the community. Again, don't ignore the elephant in the room, talk about it. And with that, you might also consider making coping skills practice or check-ins a part of your daily schedule. So when you first come in the morning, sit down for class, let's do a focusing exercise, talk with them about the importance of focusing, doing something that really cultivates and creates that sense of community, even though we're still having to engage in social distancing practices. Send the message that you're there for your students and ask them how you help. And I cannot reiterate this enough, both for teachers and for administrators, the importance of reflecting on the notion of rigor. I think it's important, obviously, to challenge students. They need to feel challenged, but right now it might actually be more important to support your students. So that's kind of a balancing act that you're going to have to engage in and figure out, where you can challenge and where you can support, because you don't want to you want to appropriately challenge, but not challenge so much that you're sending the kids that you're working with over the edge, because honestly, it'll also send you over the edge with having to try and manage that. And so just trying to reflect on that notion of rigor and let go of that control, try to really focus on challenging and teaching and less on the hard, the more specific and need for controlling your students, really focusing just on, okay, what can I teach my students today? What can they learn today? Focus more on that process than whatever product you're getting from.